Hello E39 Source. Today working with my 2000 BMW E39 M5. Doing a little bit of diagnosing and hopefully fixing of why headlights don't level. I've dealt with this problem before. Seems like half the time I've owned this car, my headlights are completely pointed at the ground. My solution has been over the past year and a half to come under the hood, take a screwdriver, and just raise them all the way up. You can tell I've been working on an E46. I was looking for the hood latch in the wrong location. So let's start by diagnosing a couple really easy things. Number one, you've got a 5 Series. They're, I'm gonna push this car back a little bit so we can see more. They're known for having headlight adjuster problems. Adjusters are what are responsible for tilting the actual two housings inside of the light to shine the light on the road, either down at the ground or up in the trees. These headlights are about a year old or less. Hella facelift, European spec, $1,400 headlights from Umnitsa.com. There are no issues with the adjusters. Here's how you can tell. In the back, find your xenon housing. It's this black and red thing. If you don't have xenons, just grab a hold of your low beam headlight bulb and gently move it up and down. If you have excessive movement, see the little movement that I have? That is not excessive movement. If you have 5-10 times that much, your adjusters are broken. And no matter what the motors do in there, they're not going to do a thing. So I guess you can do the test on the other side as well. Test your adjuster, see if it's broken. Mine aren't, so the headlights are good. If your adjusters are bad, you have a couple different options. Option one, replace the headlights. If they're foggy, they look like crap, buy new ones, buy OEM ones, suck it up, it's a BMW, pay to play, and that'll probably fix your problem, unless you have something else wrong, which we're continuing to detail in this video. So that's the first thing to check for. You can bake the headlights open. Now you put them in a microwave, read about this online, put them in not a microwave, an oven, bake them open. Since they're glued shut, you can't open them unless you have 2,000 lights, then the lens comes off, but I think you still even need to bake those to get inside. These are the post-facelift 01 Plus, of course. But then you can get in there and replace the little plastic adjusters. They're this little tiny cheap piece of crap that breaks because it isn't strong enough. You can put in aluminum ones or something. I never chose to do that with my old ones, I just replaced them. So let's actually ensure that the leveling wires are even plugged in. Here's step number 2. It's in between your halo bulb and your ballast mount, about 3/4 of the way down to the bottom of the light. It's that connector right there with all these blue and yellow wires going into it. Maybe press in the tab, pull it out, push it back on. Do the same thing over here on this side. Make sure they're plugged in. They're plugged in? Good. That's probably going to work. So we've ensured that the adjusters are okay and that the leveling wires are plugged in. Now we can continue on to the level sensors. Hopefully this is where your problem is, if you're still experiencing a problem. And I'm hoping that this is where my problem is. The leveling sensors are on the passenger side lower control arms. I don't think I'll be able to see the back one from here, but it's up there. It'll look exactly like the front one, which I'm replacing today, and this will serve as a DIY. The back one's pretty much the same thing, little different application. You'll get the idea from watching this one. The level sensor sits on the frame of the car, and then there's a little angle joint that comes down onto the lower control arm. As you go over bumps, up and down hills, the car moves around on its suspension a little bit. It adjusts a sensor, a little arm on the side of a sensor that moves around and tells the lights, oh, we're going downhill, point down or point up. Or, you know, you're going over real bumpy roads and stuff, and it'll adjust the lights, providing your adjusters are good and they're plugged in, of course. If you're a nerd, you've got access to BMW NCS software or something like that. Don't even ask me how, I don't know how myself, Bobby did. Plug that in and ask your LCM, light control module. It lives back behind the glove box. Ask the LCM if there's any problems. Look for fault codes stored in the LCM. Bobby did this for me about a week ago and the LCM was totally happy. No fault codes in there, which was good because over a year ago, or probably 3 years ago at this point, I had my entire LCM replaced for like $1,200 from a dealership, and that fixed it at that time. So I've got a nice modern LCM with software that an 03 E39 would run in this car, and I was really nervous that was going to be the same problem this time around. It is not, thank God. Then you can do the next thing. If your LCM's happy, ask your vertical aim sensors, otherwise known as the lower control arm suspension sensors, if they're happy. You could have a fault from the front one or a fault from the back one. I had a fault from the front one, so that's what we're replacing today. I'm sorry it's taken me 5 minutes to get there. The parts are in this box, and I'm going to give you a little DIY on that and let you know what part numbers you're going to need. This is the front level sensor. It may or may not be the same as the one in the back. Check out realoem.com for your specific part numbers, but 37146784696 is the part number. There's a level sensor in here that bolts onto the lower control arm on the front right. Here's the actual sensor, nice and clean and shiny and never seen any rain. It's got 6 pins in there. And then this is what would adjust the sensor. As the car goes over bumps, it'll move this arm around. It senses that difference and asks the headlights to point where they should. I suppose I should say something really easy. You can adjust your headlights, if your adjusters are okay, by inserting Phillips head screws, or I don't know what the size is, but hex Allen keys right here. There's a vertical and horizontal adjustment. You should only adjust that, however, by the book, once your car has automatically leveled them where it thinks it should be. Then you set that adjustment from here so everything's in line. But if you're going to do what I've done, since your auto adjustment isn't working, you can adjust these manually and try to get them where they should be, and mine are within a couple of feet out on the road where they should be, but I'm really hoping this completely solves that issue. So at this point now, I'm going to go ahead and lift the front of the car up, put jack stands on the front jack points, take the wheel off, and see exactly what we're working with in there and how to replace this sensor as well as the bracket, arm, and hardware. Now with the wheel removed, we peer back here, we get a much better look at everything that's going on. The level sensor is right here. Here's that arm I showed you before. This piece is the little that little joint that heads down to your lower control arm and snaps on the lower control arm. You can see the wire for it right here, and then the sensor bracket. Mine's just all real dirty, rusty, sure original, so I'm just going to go ahead and replace the entire setup down here in hopes that that will make my lights level. So why don't we first do a little before after. So I'll use this white wall as just like I did a few years ago in a video where I talked about the LCM being at fault. What we'll do is turn our key to position 2 and then turn the headlights on. So let's keep an eye on the wall. We'll be able to see exactly where the xenon beams hit and if they adjust. See, they go all the way down and then they don't do anything. They're supposed to go all the way down and then move up quite a bit, not where they were before. There they are, all the way down, they kind of bounce and then up a little bit. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. So there's the before. Turn your key off, save your battery. Let's go down there and I'll show you how to replace everything down there. Let's firstly just remove the little arm, get that off of the lower control arm. So if we get a view from down here, apologize for a dirty lens, we'll be able to see this little bracket that holds the arm down there. You may want to look at yours and see if yours is even here. If that arm's broken off, no wonder your lights don't level. It's not getting a good reading from the sensor. So we should be able to just play with this a little bit, get it to pop free, and then we'll just take the whole arm out of here. I'll let you know how I do that. Alrighty then, so on the bottom, of course it's that time of day, we're getting sunlight, we'll be able to see that it just snaps in there. You need a screwdriver and you'll be able to unhinge this entire thing, and now you can see how that worked. It just hinges around there and pushes through the hole like that. So now that we have that loose, the arm is nice and loose now, we're going to disconnect the wire from the back, which has a little tab on top, it would look like, and then should slide out. So we'll take that off and examine our contacts. I'll need 2 hands for that. To get a better look back here, I'm going to go ahead and remove the front lower fender liner. It's an 8mm here, an 8mm here, a plastic pop rivet here, and 4 10mm bolts in the recessed holes down below. So we'll remove those, being careful that the temperature sensor wire is right there, so don't rip that out. But then we can just pull this fender liner down, and in a moment, a little bit of fidgeting out of the way. At this point, we're going to remove the aluminum air duct, the brake cooler here that's responsible for holding on the center part of the belly pan. There's going to be 4 screws, or four 8mm bolts that hold this in at the top. 1, 2, 3. I don't know how to count. Apparently there's 3. It's that black little hole right there. So 3 bolts up at the top, 8mm. Down at the bottom, that's very loose. There will be 3 of those screws, those quarter turn screws that look like this. You're going to want to turn those loosen counterclockwise. They're supposed to stay in there with axial retaining clips, so maybe I'll go and get some of those and correct that. Mine don't. But then we're going to remove this entire thing and put that off to the side. If yours rattles, this stupid thing here, bend it out of the way or cut it off. You don't even need that. And you can now see a very greasy engine, as well as the bracket. Now, you don't have to go as crazy as I am with this. If you're just going to replace the sensor, simply unplug it. There's 2 tiny little Torx bolts here. I'm just replacing the entire thing since mine's all rusty. So I'm seeing a bolt up on top and another one on bottom probably. We'll figure out how to take that out now with the aluminum piece out of the way. So I finally just squeezed these tabs together on the wire and moved that out of the way. Take a listen to my sensor here. Not good. I'm really hoping that's the problem sensor, and it certainly sounds like it might be. So here is the level sensor bracket, part number 31121094608. I'm going to open that up and look at this one for a few moments and see if I can figure out how it's connected to the front subframe. Here is the bolt that I removed from the bottom. It's surprisingly long. It's a 10mm, and that went into the bottom of the mount through the entire subframe and then threaded into the top of it. So now it looks like we just need to pop this off like that, and here is the whole piece. It's got the sensor mounted to the bracket. There's the old sensor. There's the old angle joint, and that's what went on the control arm. So now we just need to use this as a model to use new parts, or just take off the old sensor and screw on the new sensor, whatever you're doing. But here is the new arm. Looks like it even has some hardware in there, which is nice. That's going to snap on the lower control arm. That's 31121094607. So I'm going to build all my new parts, replace that bolt, and hook everything back up. The sensor's on the right, the arm is on the left. The nut that's going to hold the arm on the sensor is right here. It's part number 071299058817. Here is the new product. The sensor is bolted on to the housing, or the bracket. The sensor is bolted onto the bracket with 2 little Allen bolts, which are here, 0711990433. Those are visible on either side of the arm right there. So that's what holds the sensor on the bracket. Putting the arm on the sensor was a 10mm bolt, and then you counter hold that with a wrench. My wrench was actually too thick, so I just used needle nose pliers, held that really tight and tightened it down. So this is all ready to be slid back on over the subframe. I have that 10mm long bolt reinstalled. Have to line it up wherever the hole is in that, and then we'll be able to snap the lower end of our bracket back onto the control arm and plug in our sensor. Note, in the last clip I had the sensor on backwards, and B, it's a heck of a lot easier to reinstall that long bolt through the front subframe without the sensor on. So I actually removed the sensor temporarily. Then when you put it back on, make sure that the connector faces the back of the car. That's where it'll plug in. I will note at this time, installing the rear sensor is the exact same idea, but it's a lot easier. You don't have to remove the fender liner, the brake duct cooler. It's just about 1/3 the time back there. Thought I'd show you guys what the rear sensor looks like. Here's the rear wheel. I'm about to replace the pole parking brake rotor pads back here. And that is the sensor. Note the wire comes in from the top. The arm is connected on bottom, then goes down and connects into your lower H arm with a couple bolts. And then the bracket is that boomerang shaped part to the above and right of the sensor. So make sure all your linkage is good, and that's what it looks like should you need to work back here. I used a pair of pliers to snap this clip along the lower control arm. It was a lot tighter than the old one was. Actually, I used channel locks so they could open up enough on a setting about like that. Plug your connector back in, make sure that's nice and tight, and at this point we can reinstall everything we took off and test the unit. So I've gotten a little bit creative. I've actually disconnected the arm from the lower control arm again. I'm going to hold the camera as sturdy as possible. I'm going to move the arm. You see it move? It learns quickly that it's going out of bounds and then stops working again because it's disconnected and the range of motion isn't supposed to be that great. But it's definitely controlling the headlights. I can see it, hear it, and see it move on my wall a few inches. So I'm going to put that back together now, and I have high hopes that this will be successful now. I've got everything back together now, just need to put the wheel back on the car. Noting, if all you want to do is replace the sensor, screw the arm, screw the bracket, all you've got to do is remove these two little Allen heads, one there and one there, unplug and remove. It's going to be really easy for you. You might have to take the arm off just because it would be easier to remove the bolt on the back. I replaced everything. That's why the fender liner had to come down and the brake duct line. So I'm going to put the wheel back on now, put it on the ground, and see what kind of leveling we get. Alrighty, so that probably took about an hour of just explaining and crawling down under there, trying to get that bolt back in. The top right on the brake cooler duct was a little bit difficult, but everything seemed to have gone really well. I haven't taken the car out on the road and done any adjusting yet, but it is back flat on the ground now, all four corners. Torque the wheel back down to 89 foot-pounds. Go into position 2 and flip on xenons. Goes way down, then back up, and then way up. So that now appears to be leveling itself very well. Now I'm going to drive the car, go out, see exactly where it is. I'm going to wait probably until it gets a little darker. I'm going to work on the parking brake right now for those of you who care. Do a rebuild like I did on the 330. But I will go out tonight, play with it a little bit, probably have to move them down actually. At least that's the hope. And I think it's safe to say that we did a good job with that. So check your adjusters, check your sensors. There's a third thing. Check everything. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below. If you follow all the steps in this video, you should be able to diagnose why your lights don't level. But most likely, it's your adjusters. Good luck, guys. Thanks for watching.